And we're joined now by US correspondent Simon Marks. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning, Corin.
Well, staying with our sort of theme this week of looking at the US Constitution and the powers in the US, I'm curious, does the US President have the authority to just cancel funding, or is that actually Congress's decision?
Well, he's got the authority to hold up funding, which is what he's doing. I mean, he's essentially saying, let's put a hold on paying subscription payments, if you like. We'll pay them late to the WHO. He's not announced that he's pulling the United States out of the WHO or completely terminating its funding. All he's done is announce a review, and we don't know very much about this review. We don't know who's conducting it. We don't know the terms of reference. We don't know how long the review is going to take, and we don't know whether at the end of it the United States may indeed announce that it now wants completely to review the terms of its membership of the WHO, or whether this issue is quietly going to take a backseat. Take a listen to what the head of the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, his name is Dr. Robert Redfield, and he's a political soulmate of Donald Trump's, a supporter of President Trump's, running the CDC. Take a listen to what he had to say earlier today. He doesn't really sound like a man who thinks that the CDC's partnership with the World Health Organization is about to come to a crashing halt.
CDC and WHO has had a long history of working together in multiple outbreaks throughout the world, as we continue to do in this one. We've had a very productive public health relationship. We continue to have that.
And as you know, all sorts of influential voices in the field of health have condemned the president's announcement globally, and also here in the United States. The president of the American Medical Association, Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft and the head of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, along with his wife, he said that this move is as dangerous as it sounds. So there are all sorts of people urging President Trump to look at this again. But as you know, Corin, there's nothing President Trump likes more than being alone on the world stage. A few weeks ago, alone on the world stage, calling for the US to reopen as soon as Easter. Now alone on the world stage, threatening the WHO's funding.
The thing is, he's got his headline to his base now. This is a blame game exercise, isn't it? As you say, he might just let this drop away and not actually follow through, but he's told his base that there's somebody to blame, not him.
Yeah, and this is part of a broader blame game, and it was really all kicked off by the publication of a very detailed article in the New York Times over the weekend that made it absolutely apparent that during the month of February, public health officials were urging President Trump to take coronavirus more seriously and think about lockdowns and social distancing, and he did not want to hear the advice that he was receiving. So, having been accused of not doing enough to prepare America for the onslaught of coronavirus, he is looking for other people to blame. One organisation that he's blaming, and it's not an unimpeachable organisation by any manner of means, is the WHO. Interestingly, in February, as early as February the 11th, the Trump administration was already threatening to halve US funding of the WHO in a completely separate move that had absolutely nothing to do with coronavirus. So this has long been one of those international institutions like NATO, the European Union, of which he's deeply suspicious.
But timing is the issue here around leadership, because there are those who have been critical of the WHO and some of the decisions that made around this. I mean, it's not going to be perfect. It was a difficult virus to understand. But the time to review its performance, that's the issue, right? I mean, you're in the middle of a crisis with 26,000 dead. Is that the time?
Well, I mean, President Trump, as you know, thinks that it's the time to try and eschew any blame for this crisis. So if he's not pointing the finger at the WHO, he's pointing the finger at Democrat governors here in the United States, the news media. Every night he accuses them of being fake. I mean, there are all sorts of people on the receiving end of his finger pointing as he tries to avoid taking any of the blame for the numbers and the fatalities.
It's interesting you mentioned the receiving end, because checks in the mail, those who didn't get their cash payouts from the government in the US via your normal bank account, getting put in there, getting a check. it's going to have Donald Trump's name written on it. That's a bit odd.
Yes, on the cheques. Yes, for people who are described in a phrase I hadn't previously heard as being underbanked. Would that I was underbanked. But if you are reliant on a cheque as opposed to an automatic deposit, you will now have to wait even longer for the cheque because the President has ordered the Treasury to print his signature personally on the cheques. Now, this comes just a matter of days after he absolutely denied in public he was going to do that. What? He said, millions of cheques? Do I want to sign them? Of course not. This is an administration's effort, not my effort personally. Well, now it turns out that the initial reporting was, of course, correct. He does want his signature on those cheques because he wants voters receiving them to associate that payment directly and personally with him.
Well, it is election year after all. Thank you very much for that, US correspondent Simon Marks.